The ATO is changing the rule and they are taxing you wherever you are in the world. So if you're an Aussie living overseas or planning to live abroad and work abroad as a digital nomad, remote worker, or early retirees, you need to hear this. Starting in 2026, new tax residency rules could lock you into paying Australian taxes even if you haven't lived there for years. So watch this before you make your move. Therefore, in this video, we'll break down how the old tax residency rules worked, what's changing in 2026, how this can affect you, and how you can protect yourself. Now, a quick disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor. Everything I share here is just my personal opinion for education and entertainment. Therefore, always do your own research before investing. Now let's get started with how the old tax residence rules actually worked. So for the longest time, tax residency rules in Australia was determined by factors like where you lived, where your family was based, whether you had a permanent home in the country, and how you fared on tests like the resides test, the domicile test, the 183-day rule, and the superannuation test. So basically, if you meet any of these tests, you'll be treated as an Australian tax resident. For example, with the reside test, you are considered an Australian resident if you have a physical presence there, have family or business or employment or assets there. So as you can see, all of these are extremely subjective. And you can also check out other tests that I mentioned too. They are extremely similar. But with all these tests, they all mean one thing. If you moved overseas and cut ties, you usually wouldn't be taxed like a resident, right? Therefore, a lot of Aussies take advantage of this by starting businesses overseas in Dubai, Thailand, or Vietnam, or even working overseas or retiring there. But now, the government is cracking down on this loophole and changing the rule. So, what are the new rules? But before that, if you guys are enjoying this video and would like more insights and tips about personal finance, real estate, stocks, and crypto and the cycle, make sure to subscribe to my channel and my newsletter down below. Now let's get back to the new rules that the Australian government is setting. Now, as opposed to the old ambiguous and subjective nature of the old rules, the new rules are a lot simpler to determine whether or not you are a tax resident of Australia. So under the proposed 2026 rule, if you spend 183 days or more in Australia in any tax year, you will be considered an Australian tax resident. Now that's pretty simple, right? But wait, there's more. If you spend 45 days or more in Australia in a year, you can still be considered a tax resident if you meet at least two of these factors. Now these include if you're a permanent resident or an Australian citizen, if you have an accommodation in Australia, if you have a family, or if you have substantial Australian economic ties, such as employment, a bank account, or business interests, you are considered a tax resident. Therefore, let's say you return to Australia for 8 weeks, stay with your parents, and have a bank account, right? The Australian government can still deem you liable for tax purposes even if you have lived overseas for years. So now you might ask yourself, how can this affect me? Well, if you're Australian and you live overseas, right, and you come back and you visit very often, as per the example I gave before, any income you earn overseas might be assessed by the ATO. This includes your overseas salary, foreign capital gains, and more. And it's very hard to blame the Australian government too. The Australian government net debt to GDP is now at record high at 43.8%. Therefore, they had to kind of find a way to pay off their debt. So what's the best way to raise money without upsetting the rich, the poor, the locals, and the immigrants? Taxing those that are avoiding Australian tax obligations while still benefiting from Australian infrastructure and systems. Now let's say you want to take advantage of the tax loophole. Well, I'm not an accountant, so I would advise you seek one regarding this, because what I'm about to say is only my opinion and not financial advice. So to no longer be classified as an Australian tax resident, you need to not fall in the main factors I mentioned before. This means selling any home you have, removing yourself from lease, home plans, and utility bills. Also, remember, separate yourself financially. So close your Australian bank accounts and move your investments and superannuation overseas. Consider countries with great tax benefits and treaty protection like Singapore and the United Arab Emirates, where you get safety and great network of people, top healthcare and infrastructure in the world, with zero income tax and 0 to 9% corporate tax rate. And lastly, make sure you don't spend more than 44 days in Australia in a year, and get legal advice from an international tax lawyer as soon as possible. Well, there you have it. Time is ticking until 2026 and this new rule kicks in. Do let me know what you think of this in the comment section down below, and if you want to see more like this, follow for more.